again, but it's the only way.
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wright. It is the Retro Show, the final Retro Show, and what a way to go out with a bang. Newcastle United against Barcelona, and of course it's not the only time we played them that wonderful night at St James's Park when we beat them 3-2. There are other fixtures as well, which I'm sure the panel will touch on. So it's welcome for the final time on this show to George, to Steve Wilkinson, to Stu Penman, to Mitch and Steve Hasty. Hi lads, you okay?
Good.
Excellent, good stuff. And don't worry, people out there, we will be getting the guys back on a different show, but I can't believe we've actually covered all the games and all the teams, more or less, that we set out to achieve when we started this. So it's a round of applause for the lads and well done. We don't have players that played for both teams at the end. You'd struggle to get 11, never mind 11 a sub and a manager, although we could give it a good go, I guess. But we have got a couple of celebrities just to keep in check with the other retro shows. But George, we'll start with you, mate, and Newcastle United against Barcelona.
Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year to those I haven't already spoken to. Well, it'd be no surprise that I want to kick off with the 3-2 victory at St James's Park. For me, personally, it's a game I nearly missed, and I would have regretted very much missing it. The reason I nearly missed it is because of the reduced capacity because of the ground. There were only 30-odd thousand tickets, and because they went like snow on a day. It just so happened that I, as chairman of North Tyneside Sports Council, I was invited to an event by Wallsend Boys Club, and of course there was more Newcastle players there, ex-Newcastle players there, than you could shake a stick at. And one of them happened to be somebody I knew very well as when I was there, and that was Charlie Woods, who played for the Toon. And I happened to say, so Charlie happened to say, "Are you going on for the Barcelona match?" I said, "Well, I couldn't get a ticket." He says, "That's all right, come with me. I've got 2 or 3 of my players' tickets." And then I got a surprise. Normally, when the players got tickets, you were in the paddock, or in rare occasions in the old wooden stand. However, these were for the Leazes end, and that again reflected on the fact that it was a reduced capacity. So this match was not only a great spectacle for me, but also the one and only match that I have seen from the Leazes end, because the rest of the time I've either been in the paddock or in the Gallagher end, and it was quite a change, because what surprised me is that the Leazes end, the barriers are differently spaced to the Gallagher end, and so there's still a lot of pushing forward and rushing forward when things happen on the pitch. Well, in this game, there was an awful lot of that. So, not being a tall guy, quite a lot of what was happening on the pitch, I was having to watch on my tippy toes or halfway up the back of the bloke in front of us, because I couldn't stand where I was. I was getting pushed about all over the place. Anyway, 16th of the 9th, 97. And here we are in a European Cup match against one of the top teams in the world, never mind Europe. Our team was Given, Barton, Beresford, Batty, Albert, Lee, Gillespie, Thomas, John Dole Thomason, there's a name to conjure with, Spreer, Watson, and
that was it.
John Barnes. And it was a real spectacle in a game which flowed from end to end, as they say, but also a game where one individual dominated the whole match, and that individual was Faustino Asprilla. He was, in footballing terms, unplayable that night. He just went, yeah, you can run through me photos as I'm talking if you like, Steve. There he is. He was just unplayable, and every touch was dangerous. And who would have thought that by 47 minutes of this game, we would be 3 up, and that all 3 goals, there's his characteristic somersault when he scores. would be scored by Aspria. Now, it looked like we were going to run away with it, but like all good teams and all good managers as they had, they counteracted Faustino in the second half, and Rudiger and Anderson doubled up on him in the second half, and I think he also run out of a bit of steam, and they slowly but surely clawed their way back into the game with 2 goals. The other thing about it for me was how the referee in that match and the officials generally allowed the game to flow. There were some incidents which would normally have been pulled back for free kicks and all the rest of it, but they allowed the game to flow because it was that kind of game, and I was very impressed with the way the officials handled this game. But slowly but surely, Barcelona got back into it, and Enrique scored, and then just to give us some nerves at the end, like Newcastle sometimes do. Someone's saying that Gillespie had surgery on toast all night. He did. Gillespie was also very good. Vigo scored right at the death, seconds before the end, really. And I think there's a picture of his goal in there somewhere, Steve. One of the last pictures I sent you. That's it. That's us picking the ball out the back of the net. He hit it from outside the area, and it hit the bar, hit the post, and it ended up back in the back of the net. And from then on, we had a very sweaty 2 minutes to the end of the game. But a game which I was absolutely delighted I didn't miss, because I'd have been really, really disappointed to have missed that spectacle. I'm not going to say it's one of the best games that I've seen. It was good. It's up there with them, though. And as I say, delighted that I was able to be there with the 35,274 others that were there, which of course was due to the ground changes why there wasn't a full house. This is a match that deserved a full house, actually, and a much wider audience. It did get television coverage, but it's a one that people will remember, and certainly I remember. And but you've got to come back to the star of the night. Gillespie was good, yes, I agree with that comment. But Faustino Aspria was, as I said before, unplayable. And I'll read a quote from one of his colleagues. Philip Albert said, "When you see how easy it was for him to get those 3 goals, you could only stand back and admire him." Now, I think that's not bad from one of your playing colleagues to comment in a match like that, where it's littered with internationals on the field on both sides, and yet Faustino was that. That's the program, Steve. Yes, thank you. I don't know what other is there any other? I think there might be another couple of pictures. Oh, that's the team. That's the team before kickoff, and there he is on the left-hand side of the front row, sitting there waiting to pounce as he did. And that's one of his headed goals. I think there were 2 headed goals, and that was
there was 2. Yeah,
that's
his hat-trick
one. I think that's the first one, and that's the second one. Yeah, that's the first one. Yeah, and that other one was the hat-trick one. Yeah, so amazing night, and as I say, makes you think at some of the people that we're watching nowadays, how they would cope with players like that, and I don't think they could actually, but never mind. So that's my first one. A great, Van Gaal was the manager, and as I said, that's how they got back into the game, because they reorganised, and as good managers would, and as the players did. Rudiger and Anderson doubled up on Faustino, and I think he was running out of steam. But that was it. That's my first recollection. A game that I'll always remember.
Cheers, George. Steve Wilkinson, good evening, mate. On to you.
Evening all, and Happy New Year to everybody. Steve, can you put the first picture up of this that I sent you? it's a guessy game for those that's got memories from the past. I know Steve Hasty knows where this is. I'll come back to this in a moment, but if anybody on the chat wants to say whether they think that is, then and it's got a very tenuous connection to Barcelona and Newcastle playing there. I first went to Barcelona's ground, Nou Camp, in 1977. I was on holiday in Lorette, and we had a sort of day trip to Barcelona, and part of that tour was to go to the Nou Camp. And what a fantastic stadium it was. 120,000, I think it held in those days. Probably not much less than that now. Hardly any covered in area. I think there was one bit that was covered, probably just for the officials. But obviously you expect to get good weather in Barcelona, and the sun's out all the time. And as we'll discover, that isn't the case. But I remember the pitch was, I think it was about June, July. The pitch was like a bowling green at that time of the year. I remember in the 70s, the pitches over here were just a quagmire often, and but it was actually like a billiard table, the pitch over there. So it was always my ambition to go there one day, and never thought that it would happen to see us playing Newcastle in 1997, because we'd have our little flurry in the Affairs Cup and things in the Europa League in the 70s and late 60s when we won the Affairs Cup. But it was a long way to come to think that we'd get back into amongst the real elite, like Barcelona were all the way through. So coming to the game, the reason for that picture is I don't know if anybody put the answer to the question on there, but it's the Dave Flora Robson Playhouse, which is on Armstrong Road, which is the coast road.
Well, it used to be called Benton Bank, Steve.
Yeah. If anybody doesn't visualize where that is, if you're on the road down to the left is the corner house. And if you head up the hill, you'll come back towards the Punch Bowl and towards Jesmond area. So that's the road that is now the road going through. And Flora Robson Playhouse, I think, was knocked down to make the road wider. Anyway, in 1968, I went to see a play there from the school called Pygmalion with George Bernard Shaw. And if anybody doesn't know Pygmalion, it's the one that led to the film My Fair Lady, and it's about Dr. Henry Higgins, who teaches a little Cockney flower girl, Eliza Doolittle, to talk proper. And one of the things that he used was a saying called, "The rain in Spain falls mainly on the plain." Now, in my experience, the rain in Spain falls mainly when Newcastle are playing. That was the case on this occasion in 1997. Yes, it was 97. When we played the return game to the one that that George has just talked about. Sadly, then it was on a league format at that time, as it is now, and in the league with us was Barcelona, Dynamo Kiev, and PSV Eindhoven, and we played both of those other teams. In the case of Dynamo Kiev, we played them once, got a credible draw away. We played PSV Eindhoven both home and away, and lost both games. So we were already out of the Champions League group as far as qualifying was concerned by the time we came to the return game against Barcelona. But sadly, so were Barcelona, and that meant that as a game, it was effectively a high quality friendly, and the word was in Barcelona that there wasn't many going to be there. That I think they run on a membership, so you either go or you don't. And I think the expectation was that the crowd wasn't going to be that great. But still, as far as Newcastle fans were concerned, it was a day out, and what a day out it was, because we went in our thousands. I think there was about 5,000 or 6,000 there, flying out on club tours, which is one of the ones I did on the day. I think there were some that probably went the day before and stayed overnight. And as typical with Newcastle fans, there would be loads made their way from all parts of the world, or even from Newcastle via all different sorts of routes. And everybody gathered on Barcelona for the usual pre-match drinking session and getting ourselves ready for the game on the Wednesday night. I remember getting into a square just off Las Ramblas, probably around about lunchtime. I don't know if anybody else was there in that same square.
Yep.
But there was thousands in there, finding the local hosteleries and getting tanked up as only Geordies can, playing football, singing songs. It was a very light-hearted atmosphere. I remember there was armed police there, but they really kept a low profile out the way, and there wasn't any trouble from what I remember. There's a picture of Steve, the other picture. I had gone on my own, but obviously, as old Geordies are, when you see the black and white, you all clan together, and that's a group of people that I met there. I look a bit different, as you see at the front. That's me at the front, without the glasses, with hair, and even though it was Movember hadn't been invented in those days, but I did have a hairy lip at that time. So that maybe is can go into the thing that the day I met, I suppose, for all those fans, the day I met Steve Wilkinson from the Retro Show. So if anybody recognises themselves on there, maybe get in touch. Maybe there's a viewer watching tonight that's seen it. So anyway, that was a great afternoon. The sun was shining. It was all very nice, but there was rain forecast, and we all had to be at the coaches to take us to the ground about 5:30, even though the kickoff was, I think, was 9:15. But they always make sure you're in early and get there. And so everybody trooped to the coaches down the bottom of this last Rambus and got there. And just about the time you got the coaches, the heavens opened, and it was that for the rest of the night. And it was absolute monsoon by the time we got to the ground. And for those of you who were there, will just remember. I was fortunate that being in the wheelchair as I wasn't going into the high part of the open part where all the most of the fans were, and I guess anybody up there got an absolute drenching. While I was soaked wet as we got into the game, and as I kept emerging, somebody was pushing me around, and we kept emerging at different levels on the ground, and eventually ended up in a Barcelona section, I think, which was undercover. And it was actually a part where you could get a drink, even though it was not legal to have a drink officially in the ground, and I guess the Newcastle fans didn't get a chance to have one. Those rules didn't seem to apply to Barcelona. We managed to have a couple of bottles while the game was on, and undercover, which was fortunate, although it was still pouring rain after the match. So the game itself, unfortunately, there was only 25,000 there, so me wish to see a fantastic spectacle in front of 120,000 wasn't realised, and there was only 25,000 there getting the drenching that everybody else got. It was a reasonable game. I wouldn't say it was a fantastic. It ended up 1-0. Goal by Giovanni, and he received a pass by somebody called Pep Guardiola. I don't know if anybody's heard of him, but he was one of the Barcelona players that night. Barcelona had changed the team somewhat from the first leg when we played at Newcastle. That game, I remember the one that George talked about had players that you'd heard of: Luis Figo, Luis Enrique, Ivan de la Peña, people like that that were just household names in Barcelona, but they weren't playing in this game. And there was only about 3 or 4 players from the first game that played, although there's still names like Michael Reisinger and Rivaldo, as well as Pep Guardiola were on the team. So the goal was, as I say, it was a nice goal, chipped over, and but our team, they couldn't find the net in the game, and it went into the second half. One notable debut appearance in that game, if I remember right, was Aaron Hughes, who went on to be a good servant to the club. I was involved in Nudzer, as you know, at the beginning, and Aaron Hughes was one of our first patrons we had, and he did a great job in that. But he came on as an 18-year-old substitute in the second half, and what a place to make your debut. So that was my first trip. A soaking wet game. Newcastle lost 1-0, and we were out of the Champions League, but always happy to be in it.
So Steve, can I talk about the Playhouse?
Yes, of yours, yes.
Yeah, the Playhouse was the birthplace of lots of celebrities in this part of the world. Mike Neville started his career there. George House started his career here. Jackie Haig, otherwise known as Wacky Jackie, started his career there. And most of the directors and early directors and producers for Time Tees Television were people that worked at the Playhouse. It was an absolute gold mine for people wanting to get into the game. And Mike Neville went to my school. His real name, Jimmy Briggs, by the way, not Mike Neville. Jimmy Briggs was his real name. And as I say, George House, Wacky Jackie, they all came from the Playhouse. So seeing that is a good memory, Steve. It was a nice link.
Good stuff. Okay, Mitch, on to you, mate, for your first recollection of games between Newcastle.
I'm going to take you back to the game my dad's talking about, the 3-2 home game, which I think people underestimate what that game means to us as a club.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about Faustino Asprilla, as people are saying in the chat. That was Keith Gillespie's defining moment.
Absolutely.
That night, he was utterly unplayable. And I'm going to tell you about another player, Steve Watson. Steve Watson, unfortunately, on a number of occasions, fell between a number of stools because he was so versatile. Yet my feeling was always that Steve Watson was a centre-back. And that night, for 80 minutes, he marked one of the best centre-forwards in Europe out of the game for 80 minutes. And it was only when they were really pushing at the end of the game that centre-forward got involved in the play. And nobody seemed to pick that up. That night he played centre-back. That should have been his position for the rest of his life, for me. And I'm biased. Steve went to school as... God, Steve kept me out of my year's football team, even though he's 3 years younger, because he was that much better than me, you know, at the end of the day. But when you watch someone who got labelled as a bits and pieces player and yet stuck in that team at centre-back, and he marked one of the best centre-forwards in Europe out of the game for 80 minutes and never got the plaudits for it. You know, Asprilla rightly gets the plaudits for a hat-trick. Gillespie, people remember that was his defining moment, because it was. He, that night, was utterly unplayable in the same way that Asprilla was. And actually, that night was a defining moment for us as the collective we. The team on the pitch, the fans in the stand. When we come together, when we create something special, that wave of positivity, that wave of emotion, were pretty hard to beat. And yet, this is also one of the games that people will turn around and try and beat us with a stick with and tell us we are unrealistic in our expectations. You know, you listen to some people and say, oh, well, you know, Geordies want this and Geordies want that and they want to be in here and they want to be there. We were doing this long before Spurs were involved in the Champions League. Good God, surely Amiobi had more goals than Tottenham Hotspur in the Champions League at one point in time. Fact.
He's still got more than Sunderland.
Well, obviously, yes. But, you know, we get called deluded and all of this. And yet that night against Barcelona where we rocked the football world. You go on YouTube, look where all the highlights are from. The highlights are from every single bloody television channel that shows football around the world. From America to Serbia to the UK to Australia. And everybody wants to show these highlights of a game that meant a lot to us as a club. And yet it was our amazing debut in the world of the Champions League. And is it wrong for us to look at that and go, there's a generation of our fans who've experienced that and would like to experience that again? That's not unrealistic. That's not beyond our station, because we've been there. And we've been there before Tottenham, we've been there before Everton, and a load of other names you can trot out. And that night lives long in our history as an amazing night, because, good God, that night for me I remember sitting in half time thinking, is this real? Are we really doing this? And then we're trying to after half time and go 3-0. It was just crazy, you know. And yet we had players playing at a level that we knew they could play at, but they demonstrated it on that night. And as a club, as a city, as a community, we rode that wave that night, and it was an amazing night for all of them. And I think we've all still get goosebumps sometimes when we see some of that. For me, that third goal, the header from Espria, was nearly level with the crossbar. You know, that for me just absolutely gets me every time. And that night was a defining moment in our history, and I think as a club we deserve to have that again. And over the last 13, 14 years, we've lost the ability to dream, and now we can dream again. And that's the kind of thing we need to dream for. We need to go back to that and say, you know what, we've done this before, let's do it again, and let's dream again. And that's what football's about for all of them, is the ability to dream.
Yeah, great stuff. Great recollection.
Steve, can I come back on Steve Watson's throw-in? Somebody commented it in the chat about his throw-ins. He had this amazing throw-in where he'd take a couple of steps back onto the cinder track and then do a somersault on the byline and then throw the ball in. And it used to mesmerise defences and cause all sorts of mayhem. And then the spoil sports at the FA decided it wasn't legal. But it was amazing to see him do this somersault and then throw the ball right to the penalty spot without any effort at all.
Yeah, great stuff. Stu, over to you, pal.
Well, I put my special top on tonight.
Well, hey,
Barcelona.
are you going to give us a bit of Freddie Mercury while you're on?
No. You've seen me singing on the Christmas thing, so that's why you put us on first, so everyone forgets about it by the time it's finished. The first game, I covered the one that Steve Wilkinson covered when we did the European nights, and then the one that's Mitchell Senior and Junior just covered as well. I'll cover that for my second game, so it's not all in the same one. So my third game against Barcelona was on December 11th, 2002, away to Barcelona. Now, this game should have been on December the 10th, 2002, but there'd been a downpour of biblical proportions that night, and the game got rescheduled. Unfortunately, there was a lot of fans who had travelled from Newcastle that had to go back on the scheduled flights, etc. But I was living in Tenerife at the time, and 4 of us had flown over there on the Tuesday morning with the intention of going back on the Wednesday afternoon. But once we realised the game was off, we then had to make phone calls to flight companies, to hotels, to wives, girlfriends, and for one of the lads, all of them, he had to ring his girlfriend, his wife, the hotel, everything. But it was. But to be honest, Barcelona's not the worst city in the world to be stuck in, like with a group of lads and not much to do. But it's after it is here, but not where you are. It's not after the watershed yet, so I'll keep things civil and about football. So like 5 years on from the last visit that Steve Wilkinson covered there, we're still back at Camp Nou, and the excitement never waned. You know, you're watching Newcastle at the new camp. You know, how can you not still get excited with it? And at the time, Bobby Robson, or Sir Bobby as he become, and JC were the coaching team. And JC had told us the hotel that we stayed in, so the game was, as I said, meant to be played on the Tuesday. We were meant to go back to the hotel on the Tuesday night to have a drink with the players and the staff. But we couldn't go back because they weren't allowed to drink. So for the next night, we had to get a hotel. We booked in that one, and it was the Art Hotel. Even now, like 19 plus years later, it was still expensive. For the same price then, we paid €200 a night to stay there. That was like nearly 20 years ago. But it's on the beachfront of Barcelona. It's one of the tallest buildings there. But we stayed there the second night. Like I said, a lot of fans had to go back. But when the game did start, because they managed to dry everything out the pitch and everything else, it was just like a Sir Bobby Robson tribute night. Much as adulation he's held in with both fans. Now, I've got written down some of the players that were playing for Barcelona that night. We were up against Puyol, Jabor, Cocu, Riquelme, Xavi, Mark Overmars, Mark Overmars, and Patrick Kluivert when he was good. Yeah. That was all them were in their team, and we had Shearer and Bellamy up front, but they were both injured, so they got replaced by Shola and Loire. So the phrase "what could possibly go wrong" was certainly up then. But to be fair to Shola, he was immense that night. I think that was the making of him really, where he got the respect. He held the line great, and if I recall correctly, he was only offside twice. So that's got to be a record for him in one game. And there was a thing that Newcastle had never been beaten when Shola had scored. And soon enough, I'll go through the goals now. So after about 6 minutes, I think it was, Barca scored early. It was a badly defended corner, and the ball fell to Xavi, 30 yards out. I mean, what a player to leave isolated on the ball. And he curls his exquisite cross right there diagonally across the box, and Danny nipped in at the back end, stuck his leg out, and it goes in past. I think it was Shea that was in goal. And you think, well, 6 minutes gone, that's it. We're in for another hiding here. But then, what happens? Newcastle decided to start playing football, and they were really, really, really impressive. From after going behind, they took the game to Barcelona. Nobby was brilliant that night. Kieran Dyer was making energetic runs, and the goal come from Nobby bursting through the middle, and he passed the ball to Kieran on the edge of the box, who then laid it into he just actually rolled it in the path to Shola. And you start thinking, if this was Shearer, he's going to put his boots through it, and it's like he's going to ripple the net. And Shola, for him, I'm sure the ball, the whole thing, when time freezes and everything starts going really slow motion. It must have been like that for him, because he literally passed the ball into the net. But it was with such accuracy. It was right in the corner. It was ones each. And unfortunately, because a lot of the fans had to go back to Newcastle the night before, there was only a couple of hundred still there. But you would have thought there was about 5,000, the noise that we made. We'd seen Newcastle score at the Nou Camp, which we hadn't done 5 years previously. We'd seen Shola score at the Nou Camp. And you're thinking, right, we've never got beat when Shola's scored. We can't get beat, can we? But 12 minutes later, that was undone by some double Dutch. Mark Overmars, who was exceptional that night. He gave Griffin a torrid sign. He crossed the ball at the middle, and Kluivert really he did it well. To put them 2-1 up. Now, again, going into half-time, we still seem to be, we weren't lying down or feared. I think it was instilled in them. They were as good as anyone, especially the previous few years that we'd had. And Barcelona weren't that great at the time in the league. They were struggling with all the prima donnas that they had. So going into half-time, 2-1 down, you think, right, we've got a good chance here. And Laurent Robert, he had his shooting boots on that night as well, for those who were at the game. And if the ones who can remember it, they'll also remember he must have his boots on the wrong foot, because every shot he had was going like 30 yards wide, 40 yards over the bar. It was ridiculous. It's just no matter what he did, it wasn't coming off. But the effort was there. But then we get to 3-1, the last goal of the game, and it was just before the hour. And there was a lapse of concentration. I'm sure you'll remember this when I talk about it. It was of epic proportions. A corner come over, and Dyer was on the back post. Except he wasn't on the back post. He was behind the back post. When the ball got flicked on, he's looking at it like he might as well have been having a fag on the side. And he's looked up and the ball hit his thigh, but it had already crossed the line. There was no need for a VAR at this stage. It was over. But even then, 3-1 down, you think the game's over. We're going to give up, but we didn't. And we pushed and pushed and pushed to get back into the game. But to no avail, but we could leave there with our heads held high. We then did get back to the hotel, had a decent night with some of the players. And then had to then go to gift souvenir hunting in the morning to make up to the other halves for being 24 hours later than what we promised would be when we went to Barcelona. So our next away game in Europe, can anyone guess what it was? I'll give you a clue. You haven't seen a Mac on there.
Milan.
There you go. So that was Barcelona 2002. 3-1 defeat, but I was there.
Brilliant stuff, mate. Steve, I always feel a bit guilty coming to you after all the lads have had their say, and you just say, right, back there. Go on, mate. Where are you going to take this? Especially with this one, because there's such a small amount of games to cover.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm going to take you back to the 3-2, but I want to sort of bring it to how we got there. Obviously, that season, what people have got to realise is we're qualified into the Champions League proper from the qualifying rounds. So we'd already played a qualifying game. This was only our second game of the season when we played, like, proper official game of the season, taking away that qualifying game. We only had one league game, and then we'll go into this game against Barcelona. Now, I don't know about the rest of you or anyone else who's listening, but the excitement of Newcastle United playing in the Champions League really, really got to me. It was just the excitement, the thought that Newcastle United were now on the biggest stage in the world playing Barcelona, one of the top clubs in Europe. And I was equally as excited for having the referee. He was like a referee that you recognised off the telly in Kalina, you know, the best referee in the world, you know, was at St. James's Park. And that sounds ridiculous. But the guys have gone through the team, you know, that you look at the team: Given, Barton, Beresford, Watson, Albert, Batty, Lee, Barnes, Gillespie, Aspria, and John Dal Thomason. But there's people out there going, well, where was Ginola? Where was Ferdinand? Where was Shearer? Where was Lee Clark? Where was Beardsley? Where was Robbie Elliott? And unfortunately, the club and our manager had decided to sell Ginola, decided to sell Ferdinand, got rid of Lee Clark, got rid of Beardsley, got rid of Robbie Elliott that season. Shearer was injured in the pre-season against Everton. And so we went into, and who did we sign as their replacements? Well, okay, we bought Shea Given. Shea Given came at the start of that season. But we bought John Barnes. Oh, God, finished by the time he arrived. We bought Stuart Pearce. Again, although he had a decent time at Newcastle, I don't think anyone thought, get in, you know, maybe I shouldn't say that, bearing in mind some of the players that we're now being linked with in the age. But we bought Ian Rush. Ian Rush is the oldest player we have ever bought. He was 36 when we signed him. We're whinging about, or some people are whinging about buying Chris Wood at 30-year-old. We've got Ian Rush at 36, for God's sake, you know. So then we John Dal Thomason. Nobody had heard of him, and we watched his whole career go down the pan after one mistake, one failed goal, and the lad's career was almost over. We bought Ketsbaya, who nobody had heard really of. And we bought a goalkeeper called Ralph Kydell as well. I think he went as soon as he came, as many goalkeepers. So that's what the club was at. But it was still exciting, the fact we're going to play Barcelona. The game itself, the guys have already described the game. Absolutely superb goals. But I went into that also excited about seeing certain players in the opposition. It's not something that really gets to us now. You know, you hear of, like, there might be one player or two players. I know it was good to see Ronaldo a couple of weeks ago at St. James's Park, even though he had a disastrous game. But it was good to actually, you know, after all those years, see him. But you look at their team. They had Nadal, because I was a great watcher of Spanish football at the time. They had Nadal, who was like a rock at the back and was solid. Luis Figo, you've mentioned.
He's not bad at tennis either, Steve, is he?
Yes, exactly. Enrique, De La Pena, Anderson, Rivaldo. Rivaldo was you know, turned into an absolute world superstar as well. And I was as excited as I was to watch these players. And then, of course, you follow those players' careers through, you know, because you've seen them playing at St. James's Park. You have, like, in the first time you've seen a big European game, you have, like, an affiliation, you have, like, a connection, you start looking at them. And it's strange how you do, because Luis Figo, in his last game that he played before he retired, when he had eventually gone from Barcelona to Milan, from Madrid to Milan, in his last game when Milan won the league, he was substituted so that the players, the fans at Milan could really, really praise him as he walked off the pitch as he was retiring. And he was replaced by David Santon, believe it or not. someone who signed for Newcastle later on. It's all these little connections that pop up, that you think, football's, it's a big game, but when it comes to Newcastle United, because we played the likes of Barcelona, because we got onto the European stage, maybe that's how we suddenly ended up buying players of European quality later on. And I think that's where the seed was sown, and we shouldn't sort of distance ourselves from the fact that it wasn't just a great game, but it did put Newcastle United on the European stage as a big club, and we will be in that situation very, very shortly, one hopes. But I haven't said much about the game, but just set the scene on why it was important and what it meant to me. That's basically all I could say, because you said the rest anyway.
Good stuff. Point out there our thanks once again to Spider VPN. Been with us for months now, but one of our main sponsors for all your internet security. Google Spider VPN. They are the boys to trust. Thanks a lot, lads. Thanks also to skipsandbins.com. Telephone 0800 25 45 25 3. Email inquiries at skipsandbins.com. Website www.skipsandbins.com. Easy contract, free and pay-as-you-go waste collection. Thanks also to L&G Family Funeral Directors, 0191 389 7245, and the Garden of Healing Dispensary, CBD Hemp and Cannabinoid Specialists, www.theguhd.com. Thanks also to Arcot Interiors, based at the bottom of Heaton Road. For all your kitchen needs, just Google Arcot Interiors. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle. Thanks also to jabsignature.co.uk for producing our flyers and media arts, for producing our videos. If you're a first-time visitor to the channel, subscribe. Hit the Newcastle Legends logo in the bottom right-hand corner. And that's it. You can subscribe for free, still 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up to like the video, click share to share to your social media, and drop into the comments box to post a question or to speak to like-minded Newcastle fans. Also available as a podcast 24 hours after the show on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. And don't forget as well, we've quite close now to this event, Sunday the 30th of January. It's an afternoon event, an afternoon with Peter Beardsley and Mick Lowes at the Time Theatre. Tickets still available on Google and on Wowcher. Okay, George, back to you for your second story.
Well, my second story is a bit of a hodgepodge. I was going to concentrate on the 2003 game at St James's where Barcelona beat us 2-0. It was a full house, 52,000. Given Griffin, Bramble, O'Brien, Solano, Bernard, Dyer, Janus, Robert, Bellamy, and Shearer. Quite a strong team, but unfortunately, that's the program for the game. Thanks, Steve. Barcelona were just that bit stronger, and where this first match we talked about was a game of football. On this match, they actually give us a footballing lesson. I mean, it was only 2-0 because of the heroics of Given and some of the really do-or-die defending by O'Brien and Bramble and Bernard. The rest of it was really all one-way traffic with Barcelona. And I have to say, Kluivert was superb. Now, that's I think Steve said or somebody else said, that's the Kluivert I wished we'd seen in black and white at Newcastle, not the one that we got when he was on his way out. And as I was doing this, I thought, well, why not look at what Barcelona really is? And so I delved a little bit into their history, having to say that match was a football lesson from us. And 1899 they were created by a Swiss guy called Johann Camper. And he was a sports fanatic, and he got together with some Germans and English people in Barcelona and formed this sports club. He was they adopted the city coat of arms as their badge. He was a sports fanatic camper. He was international class in athletics, in cycling, rugby and golf, but had this passion for starting football and wanted to get it going in Barcelona. So they started their own club run by the members as it still is today. And in 1910, they formed the badge that they've got now, which remains the badge they've got today. The colours, the red and blue stripes, halves, comes from the fact that two of the original members of the club, the Withy brothers, went to Merchant Taylor School in England, public school, and the rugby strip for the Merchant Taylors was red and blue stripes, and that's why Barcelona's got red and blue stripes, which I thought was, it could only happen to English. They shot forward once they got organised. They had 3 stadiums. I don't know if you've got the pictures of the stadiums, Steve.
Yeah, I have.
That's the first one on the Industria Stadium, where they first started off. And then after about 20 years, they moved to the next one, which was the El Cortez Stadium. And then in 1957, they moved to the Nou Camp, which means new field, is what that means in literally. And that's the modern Nou Camp. And I have to say, Steve saying about going to the Nou Camp, my first visit to the Nou Camp was when we were on holiday in Spain with a certain young man sitting down in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen there. And we went not just to visit. I managed in the hotel, we managed to get tickets for the pre-season tournament. So we set off from...
One Camper Trophy, yes.
That's it, the one Camper Trophy. And we set off about 2 o'clock from Salou, where we're staying, and we didn't get home till about 3 o'clock the next morning. We sat from about 4 o'clock in the afternoon till about 1 o'clock in the morning, just watching one game after another game and after another game. It was absolutely fantastic. And looking at, some of the top players in the world over that period of time. But the other thing that struck me about the Nou Camp is somebody said to me, when we build a new stadium, we should look at the Nou Camp. Nou Camp was there in 1957, and when we were there, it was possible for the peanut seller and the ice cream man to walk along in front of you and give you to your hand. There's none of this throwing it in the crowd. He actually could walk along in front of you because that's how much room there was. And it's something to behold to sit in a stadium like that. And I don't think it took Neil and I quite a while to get over that. The second time I went was when I was on holiday in Neur with Marjorie. And I got a ticket to go to see Barcelona versus Real Madrid. Now, those tickets are like gold dust. But this waiter in our hotel, and we'd been to this hotel several times before, we used to go there for a month every January at one part of our lives. And this waiter could always get tickets for things, and he got these tickets for Barcelona versus Real Madrid, and that was an unbelievable match and occasion and all the rest of it. Really was incredible. Actually, this waiter that I mentioned in this hotel, there was somebody in the hotel, some bigwig got his big posh limousine was pinched from outside the hotel, and he was making all sorts of threats about what he was going to do and all the rest of it. And this waiter came in and said, "Oh, senor, you leave it to me. Don't trouble the guard. I'll get your car." And within 6 hours, the car was back outside the hotel. So I don't know who this waiter knew, but it was obviously somebody very important in the world of Spain and crime, I suspect, allegedly. Anyway, the Barcelona Real Madrid game was just unbelievable. And looking at the history, the Spanish Civil War was interesting impact on them, because the president of the local Catalonian district of Catalonia was a Francophile. He was supporting the revolution, and so they got rid of on the board any royalists on the board at Barcelona were asked to leave. Tout suite, off you go. And it was funny when the war was over and Franco decided to put the king back again. suddenly those people were coming back onto the board at Barcelona. So it is a very, very political organisation as well. Camp Nou died in 1930 of his own hands, sadly. He had some personal problems and it just became too much. And they were in huge debt as they are now. And they embarked on what's called the Tour of Salvation in the Americas. And they went to Mexico, Brazil, and the USA and played games in the USA and made over 500,000 pesetas, which today would amount to, this is 1937, would amount to millions and millions. And when they got back, they were able to clear off all the debts and set the club up for an interesting future. And just to really emphasize what an important club they are, 26 La Liga titles, 31 Copa del Rey titles, 5 European Cups, and 3 World Club Championships. Well, that's quite a CV for any football club. Interesting about the new camp as well, designed by a British architect, Norman Foster. Now, I've never seen anybody in this country even talk to Norman Foster about the sports ground, but that's who designed the new camp, and it would seem to me that it wouldn't be a bad start if we wanted to change for somebody to talk to Norman Foster. Anyway, I just thought that add a bit more history to why we got so wound up about it being Barcelona and how important they were. Again, as somebody said on the bottom, they're back to being crippled with debt again. But I've no doubt that the members will rally around and find a way of getting them out of that trouble.
Yeah,
that's my second story.
Great stuff, George. Always good to get a historical take on it as well. Steve Wilkinson, over to you for your second and final story on the Retro Show.
Right. Well, I'm going to go on and talk about the game that Stu talked about earlier on, and talk a story, a sad story, because there's probably others like me watching tonight who were amongst those many that didn't see the game but went to Barcelona for it, and couldn't stay on for the Wednesday. I actually booked 2 nights stay with some mates. Well, a mate from work and some of his friends. There was 5 of us. We drove down to Luton in my car on the Monday. Got a flight to Barcelona from Luton, and I'd booked into a hotel for 2 nights on the Monday and the Tuesday night, and the return flight was 5 o'clock on the Wednesday after the match. And so it was a sort of chance to have a mini break with the match in the middle of it, and plenty of time to build up for it on the Tuesday. I met up with other friends there who were also staying at the same hotel when we got there on Monday night, and we had a relatively quiet Monday night, just something to eat, and then got ready on Tuesday, got up breakfast, and the heavens were opened already, and the forecast for the day wasn't too good, and so you were watching all day for the chances whether we were going to hear whether the game was off or what. But it was absolutely monsoon all day. What I'd experienced at that night time on the 1997 game was happening all day on the Tuesday, and you were just, as they were getting nearer and nearer time, you were just praying that it was going to ease off and it would drain away quickly, which it quite often does in Spain because it's quite warm underground. I remember when having been on holiday, where you could have a thunderstorm in the afternoon outside the hotel, and you'd be sitting on the grass an hour or so later with the rain all gone. So you always hope that if the rain stopped, the game would go on. So the day progressed. It got to sort of about 6 o'clock time, I think it would be, and there was still no announcement whether the game was going to be on or off. So we thought, well, we'll go through the motions. We'll go at the ground and see what happens. So we got all ready to go at the match. Whatever waterproofs we had, trying to protect ourselves from it. And got to the ground, and at that stage everybody was locked out. They weren't letting anybody in. So I made my way around to where the wheelchair entrance was, and they decided to let me in. We actually got into the ground, and so the couple of people that were with me, we went in and we went to where we were due to be in the ground and just watched the referee inspecting the pitch. The water was he just couldn't kick a ball. He was trying to kick the ball as they always do to see whether it's good. There was absolutely waterfalls coming off the roofs of the stand. It was absolutely horrendous seeing it. But still no announcement whether the game was going to be on or off. They might have delayed the kick-off or whatever. And I think the rain might have been still hopeful that it was going to stop. But it was just getting worse.
That's the pitch, Steve. Yeah, I think that's a picture I put in.
Oh, right, and not on the night. Yeah. And so as I say, there was no official announcement coming out, and I rang one of my mates who hadn't gone to the match at home, and he was watching, and he'd seen it announced on Look North. So the first time I heard was at probably about 7:15 from a mate back home, where they told that they announced on Look North. While we were on the ground, they hadn't yet announced there that the game was off, but we heard via my mate back in Newcastle on Look North that the game was off. So we made our way out. And then there was obviously the first thing you heard was there was a likelihood it was going to be played the next day. Well, we were hoping that it might be maybe a lunchtime kickoff or something like that, so we'd still have a chance of it. But then they announced it would be the same sort of evening kickoff. So as Stu said, there was a mad scramble for everybody to get accommodation, going to internet cafes to book new flights, and we couldn't do it. Although I think two of the lads that I was with did manage to do it. They managed to stay. So we were just hoping that there would be some sort of cancellation maybe on the flight and we'd hear during the day. So it was still pre-match all through that Wednesday, waiting for the hope that we might get a chance to see the match. On the morning of the match, like so many other Newcastle fans did, we all went to the museum. I don't suppose Barcelona had ever seen so many Newcastle fans in the museum that morning. I don't know whether you were there, Stu, but it was
no. I was somewhere else that morning.
Is this the watershed moment? Is it?
Yes, it was.
We'd actually been to watershed moments the night before, because when we did get back to the hotel and he said, well, what are you going to do now? I thought, well, let's go out on the town. And we did sort of go to those entertainment venues that you can't talk about in the pre the watershed. So it was a good night out in Barcelona, but that wasn't the reason I'd gone. And I'd gone to see a football match, which unfortunately I didn't. So as the day went on, it got to the point where three of us were going to have to go back to Newcastle. So we headed to the airport, got our flight at 5 o'clock, and got to Luton. Not much more before the kickoff time. I thought, well, maybe at least we'll be able to listen to it on the radio on the way home, or find a bar with a telly and stay down and watch it. But at that time, it wasn't mass coverage on the like it is now, anyway. You can go and see all the games at the same time. And God's law says Man United were playing the same night. So not only was the televised match the Man United game, but also 5 Live coverage was the commentary of the Man United game. So even driving back up, we didn't get a chance to hear how the match was going, other than the odd time they went interrupt Man United game to tell us about the goals. And obviously we were as delighted as Stu was when we heard that Shaw had stuck a one in. But overall, that was my trip to Barcelona, where like many of the other thousands who had turned up for the Tuesday game and couldn't stay over, we never get to see the game and see Newcastle score in the new Camp Nou, as once again the rain in Spain falls mainly when Newcastle are playing. So that's right back to the beginning, full circle.
Very good. Good finish there, Steve. Mitch, on to you, mate.
You know, for me, sitting here now, I don't necessarily feel I need to talk about a game. You know, we've got 4 games to talk about. And the lads can talk about those games probably far more eloquently than I can. What we have with Barcelona is a strange relationship. And that's something that lingers for me all the time. Where clubs in the northeast of our country, we're clubs that have a connection to the working class in our region. We're clubs that look to not just represent the town or the city, we represent the region and the people of the region. And we've always had that sort of strange synergy, even down to St. George on the badge. And, you know, All of that we carry. If you look at some of the flags that the Catalans wave, they're Northumbrian flags.
Yeah.
We have this unbelievable regional synergy with a club and a city. And then you come down to individuals, and you come down, obviously, to Sir Bobby Robson. And the connection between the two clubs that Sir Bobby links. And he's loved in Barcelona, and he's loved in the northeast of England for everything he was and is and still stands for. Then you have this odd link through that to somebody like Jose Mourinho, somebody well loved and respected in the football world, who still refers to St James's Park as Sir Bobby's house. And these links come back to this regional synergy that we seem to have with Barcelona. And it's a club that, my dad's talking about us going to see Barcelona play the Wang Gambler Trophy. We didn't just do it 1 year, we did it for about 3 or 4 years on the bounce. We saw some of the best teams in Europe over 2 days in a semi-final on one night, the third and fourth place, and the final on the next night. And we did it for years, probably 3 or 4 years. It was part of our summer holiday. It wasn't just about going to the northeast of Spain and enjoying ourselves. It was like, right, can we squeeze some of these football games in at this time as well? And for me, growing up, understanding European football and seeing the bigger picture beyond the top flight or the second flight of English football, for me, part of my football education. I was grateful enough through the 80s to go and do games with my dad in the 84 European Championships in France, for example, and just mad things like that. But the connection with Barcelona has always been, for me, quite strong. And that's something I think we've always shared, and yet we can't express it always, I think, in something tangible. Yeah, we've got Spot. Yeah, we've got Jose Mourinho. Yeah, we've played each other. I think it's only 4 times actually in competitive competition. And yet all 4 games have something about it. All 4 games we've all got stories from. And this is the thing about Barcelona. For me, I've lost a little bit of time for Barcelona in the last couple of years. As Steve would say, as we've looked at the way the world of football finance works in the last few years, and the way that certain clubs have been exposed about how they're propped up. And Barcelona is one of them, being propped up by regional government, effectively, and being allowed to do things outside of FFP. Many clubs can't because they're being propped up by regional government. That's not right. We don't have that. We don't have that luxury. Perhaps we do now. Let's see. But in terms of playing Barcelona, it's always felt like almost like a friendly derby, and that we have far more affinity with that club in that region than perhaps people realise. And I'm really lucky. I've seen us play Barcelona 4 times, the 4 times we played them in Europe. I enjoyed and relished the 3-2 win, but at the same time, my celebrations when Shola scored the equaliser, when we ultimately got beat 3-1, were unashamedly fantastic. Because there we were in the night camp, 1-1, bring it on, here we go. And we all want and need more of that. And this is where some of this absolute tripe about our expectations being unrealistic. Do you know what? We've been there. We've done it. The evidence is clear. It's fact. But just like that again, we went into all of those games against Barcelona with no expectation other than let's give it a bloody good go. And that's all we would do if we ever went in the Champions League again. We'll give it a bloody good go. And we come away with memories, like beating Barcelona 3-2, like beating Juventus at home 1-0, like going to Feyenoord and doing something that nobody else had ever done and qualified from that second stage after losing the first 3 games. That's what we want. We don't expect to win the bloody thing. Just give us a chance to bloody the nose and go toe-to-toe. We'll take that every day. And these games against Barcelona are all about that. And yet people will use that against us as a fan base to say we're unrealistic. And we're not. We just want to go toe-to-toe, give us the chance and we'll bloody love it. And that's what all these Barcelona games are about for me.
Brilliant stuff. Stu?
Follow that, eh?
Follow that. two rants. That tanker that Mitch's dad bought him is certainly, it's like a special portion or something in there.
I know what's going in it though, so I can understand. Right, just to clarify, yes, that is the Christmas tree, and yes, it's still up, and it'll still be up until early part of next week.
I thought you were going to say early part next month.
Nah, I tell you what, it'll be there all year if she had her way, but I'm not to touch it, so just got to smile. See, I'm the boss of this house.
You can't take a Christmas tree down.
No, I'd break it anyway.
She'll kill him, man. She'll kill him.
Right,
Oh, she would.
Put a bin bag over it.
She put it up, she can bring it down. So I've covered the Christmas tree, right? Because it's the last retro, and I want to cover probably one of the best games that we've had, and it's the game that George and Mitch and Steve Acey all covered, which was a 3-2 home game in September. And I'm just going to go through the goals. September 97, that is, not last September, unfortunately. The first goal, was it a dive by Tino? You know what I mean? So, or was it clever play?
His leg in?
Well, he did when he put his leg in, to be fair. But the bloke next to me, but there was no VAR. So the bloke next to me, he was, and when you look at someone, think, are you being serious, mate? We've just got a penalty against Barcelona, and he was like good athletic that it was a dive, but he did share when we scored, like. But who cared? Who cared? We had a penalty against Barcelona, and it took someone with some nerves of steel, well, I said nerve, not the word, of steel. There was one nonchalant walk up, not a run up, one nonchalant kick, one flailing hand from a goalkeeper, one net rippling, one somersault, and a 1-0 up against Barcelona. Tino! And we're off and running. So that's the first goal. The second one, the celebration has just about died down. It was 8 minutes later when quick thinking and possibly the best forward pass of David Batty's career, he knocked it out wide to Gillespie, who turned his man and he ran at the fullback and he delivered what's described as an inch-perfect cross for Tino to produce a leap that defied gravity, and he powered his header into the Gallagher net. And you know what? That goal, the second one, the noise that was generated in the Gallagher that day, I still get goosebumps now. I can show you, still get goosebumps now thinking about it. So once again, Tino, we're 2-0 up against Barcelona, and we reach half time. It stays still 2-0, and we're on the front foot, and you're thinking, this is just incredible. This is the same team that had, I know I talked about on the Christmas special when we did the European nights, but 10 years previously, look at the players that were representing this club, our club. But anyway, second half starts, and Barcelona must have got a bit of a flag in their ear, and they were attacking a bit. But then a move that will live with me forever and ever and ever was Rob Lee got the ball on the edge of our box, and he drove forward to just about the centre circle, knocked it square to Gillespie, who let the ball run across him. He's turned past the defender, and he was away like a gazelle on steroids down that wing. And he's just had one look up, and if the second cross was inch perfect, this one was millimetre precision, and the header from, I know Mitch talked about before how high he jumped. Bang, again, he defies gravity. And with 3-0 up, and we're in danger of surpassing the 5-0 we did against Man United just 11 months previously. 3-0 up, Tino hat-trick. I think that definitely deserves a Tino. So that was us in Dreamland, and then Newcastle do. Well, Newcastle wouldn't be Newcastle if they didn't do what Newcastle do. And they did the most Newcastle thing and got caught in two minds. Do they go forward and keep pushing, or do they sit back and try and defend? And we did neither, to be honest. We just seemed to get stuck. So it's just after halfway in the second half, I think it was 72, 73 minutes, some careless defender allowed Barca to ping the ball around as they do. And the ball fell onto the right side of the box to some fella called Figo. Figo. And he delivered. In keeping with tonight, he put a cross in that was perfect for Luis Enrique. Now, to me, this was handball because it looked. They said it come off his chest, but if you ever watch a replay of it, you know there's claims to say it hit his arm as well. So that's that with running down the clock. A couple of minutes to go, and as George mentioned earlier, there was a flap across cover. I think it was a corner, and Shea just flapped at it, and they got bounced back to post, back to the front, and then got scuffed out. Landed to this Figo chap again. I mean, I don't know if he made a good career out of himself or not. But anyway, he had a decent second half this game, and he's hit a ball through. And I'm not exaggerating. There must have been about 8 players in front of him. And as good as he was, he couldn't do that again. It just hit no one and went into the bottom corner. And it was 3-2, and you're thinking, here we go. How is this rug going to get pulled from underneath our feet? But it didn't. And that was that. Folklore was created. Legends were made. Stories that we're still talking about now, 20-odd years later. It was amazing. And after that, I went straight to the arena to catch the second night of the Oasis concert. Now, some might say that was a perfect night. So it's adios from the retro, and I just want to say it's been an honour to be asked on it in the first place. And it's been a privilege sharing the screen with George and with Steve and Mitch and Steve talking about games. And thank you for everyone for watching, for us talking rubbish about games from years ago. It's a series. It's been really nice sharing our tales and for people to watch, tune in, and everything else. So thanks very much.
Good stuff. Okay, Steve Hasty.
Right, leave it to me. I was at the Oasis gig the night before, so I was sensible, so I could go to Strawberry after the match. There was none of this going back and worshipping other people.
But you live forever, you man.
Well, that's true. I knew you were. I've been waiting for it. I'll go to the game that's already been mentioned as well, but I'll just. It was the 1-0 defeat in the pouring rain, which was the return leg in 1997. Got the plane there the day before. We had 3 days there. First memory was first time I've been on an aeroplane, which for 2 hours or just over 2 hours of a flight, I think there was 6 domino cards went round at least, if not more. It was the first time I'd experienced Newcastle fans on an aeroplane on an away flight who were subsidising their trip by running domino cards, which I thought was very, 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 very clever of them. We got to Barcelona round about the lunchtime, maybe just after, and it was a case of there's your room, throw your bag in, and straight back out on the drink for the rest of the day. But got up the next morning. Now, remember, I'm with Newcastle fans, and anyone who knows my little circle of friends as well will know what cheapskates they are. So there was no chance of missing the paid-for breakfast. That was the key. You were going to come down to that breakfast no matter whether you drank yourself into a stupor, you couldn't walk, your head was spinning, whatever. I knew they'd be all down for breakfast. So anyway, sure enough, went down. Everybody's there, suffering. And then you just knew you had another day on the drink. Anyway, looked at the table next to her, and the table next to us all lined up. And I've mentioned this on the show before. Tables all lined up for breakfast, and there's not a single person turns up. And we're thinking, like, you can see the lads going, well, what a waste, this breakfast. Then this little bloke walks in, and he looks at the table all lined up, and he walks over to the waiter, and we're just thinking, who's this character? And he walks over, and he goes, beers. And waiter's looking at him and thinking, it's breakfast. And no, beers. And he made him put a bottle of beer into there must have been 12, 15 places on this little table. Long table. It's all laid out for breakfast. And there's nobody there, but there's 12, 15 beers laid out, instead of the coffee and that. And we're just having our breakfast. And as the lads from this other table started to walk in, every single one of them, as they were sat down, there's this little Hitler character who's going, got to drink this beer before you have your breakfast. You got to set yourself up. That was it. If you didn't get out before me, you had to have a beer. And sure enough, as the whole table filled up, everybody had to have, before they'd even started, like a bit of toast, a cup of coffee or whatever, they had to drink this beer. Subsequently realised this was the first time I'd met Keith Patterson in an away game. The Keith Patterson from NCSL, and it was his party of pals from Durham who were on the other table, and you wouldn't believe it when you look back over the occasions that we've had following Newcastle. But yes, that was Keith Patterson, and my first reminiscence of Keith Patterson in an away game. So the day was set. Everything else has been said about that match. The disappointment, you look at the team that were put out, and you had Heslop in goal, Beresford and Pistoni as fullbacks, Peacock and Albert at back, Patty, Barnes, Gutspire, Stevie Watson, and a certain Des Hamilton in the midfield with John Hal Thomason up front on his own. Barca, as Steve Wilkinson said, they knew that they were already qualified and everything was, they changed their team. Figo was on the bench, Nadal was on the bench, Sammy Fernandez was on the bench, Montero. Our bench consisted of Pav, Stuart Pearce, Brian Pinas, remember him? Aaron Hughes, Robbie Elliott, and Jimmy Crawford. That was the quality that we took on that second game. And I think it was the other only thing, obviously the pouring rain, the amount of money that was spent, and then the hanging around until 3 o'clock in the afternoon to get the flight home, struggling to find clothes that were still that were dry enough to wear. There's probably, I've posted up before photographs of the lads in Barcelona, and we did actually meet quite a few of the squad. Not that many of us wanted our photographs taken with them, but yeah, Barcelona, absolutely fantastic trip. Was in that square with you, Steve. Didn't say hello, didn't buy you a drink, and probably wouldn't have if you'd been there anyway, because I'm a cheapskate, you know. So, but absolutely fantastic trip, and I'm hoping that we get the opportunity to go to Europe again. I'm hoping some of the younger fans, as we were relatively young in those days in 1997, get the opportunity to experience what we've experienced at away games, experience the drama of a 3-day away trip. It seems ages since we've had those opportunities, and I'm just hoping we're going to get the opportunities again. And Mitch, just to finish off, you were talking about Barcelona and their finances and such like. I think you'll find that Barcelona, I've just checked up, they're currently 1.35 billion euros in debt, of which they owe 673 million to banks, which isn't bad. They have restructured their debt with a certain American bank. The priority is going to be to rebuild the new camp by 2025, increase its capacity to 105,000. And according to their current president, he expects to generate additional, generate an additional 200 million euros a year from the redevelopment of the new camp moving forward, through catering, ticketing, VIP boxes, hospitality, and the opportunity to have meetings and events. And I suppose that includes tourists like yourself nipping along and going on let's have a look at the museum. Christ, that's the sort of money. 200 million a year he reckons he's going to make. Good luck to them. But football's a funny old game, isn't it?
As somebody once said, fantastic, lads. Great show tonight. Been a great series. I will finish off with some supposedly celebrity Barcelona fans. See whether you can guess who these are.
That's Justin Bieber.
Yeah, Justin Bieber.
Yeah, Justin Bieber. God, I would never have had him down as a football fan.
Oh, the opera singer.
Yeah.
Come on.
Jose
Carreras.
Jose Carreras.
A very old Carreras, I must say.
This man sadly no longer with us.
LeBron.
No, Cody Bryant, is it?
Yeah, Kobe Bryant.
Brian.
That's Shaqiri. Shakira.
Yes, Kira.
Well, she's married to Piqué, isn't she?
Shaqiri.
So,
Yeah.
She is.
Last one.
Salvador Dali.
Salvador Dali.
Dali, yeah.
What a great great one to finish off with. George, and people do like the history lessons. I presume this was the guy who you were talking about earlier
That's
about Barcelona.
Johan Camper, yes, that's right.
Juan
That's him.
Gampa, yeah.
Well, that's him. Yeah.
Yeah, and I did have another 2 photographs. I'm just not sure what the relevance was. That
Well,
one, George, from you.
That's an old program. I don't know why I sent that one. Don't know why I sent
All right,
it.
okay, you sent that. Yeah, I've got no idea why you sent that. I'll not do that. And a lot of people as well. I mean, it was mentioned in the chat there. I did notice, but yeah, it was Kenny Dalglish who managed the infamous
It was.
3-2.
Indeed.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
It
Yeah.
wasn't Kevin Keegan, and I was lucky in
No.
those days. I'll finish up with a story, but in those days, I was doing the football fanzine, the number 9, which had obviously followed on from being the mighty Quinn, and the club and me, surprise, surprise, had a tenuous relationship. But at that time, when Kenny Dalglish came in, things certainly appeared to be on the up. I must have a guardian angel in Liverpool, because I got a phone call out of the blue from Kenny Dalglish when he took the manager's job at Newcastle United. I was asked to go along to the press conference when he was announced as the manager as a guest by Kenny Dalglish. So I went along and I met him. I was there. I've got a photograph on the day of the press. I just remember seeing the likes of Alan Oliver and John Gibson and a few of the other local journalists looking and saying, what on earth is he doing here? You know, how's he managed to get his way in? Anyway, on the day, Kenny made a point of coming up and having a chat with me, and he offered me the opportunity to be the first person to actually interview him at the training ground. And at the time, Newcastle were still training down at Maiden Castle, and I made my way across by train. Obviously, I didn't drive, and I made my way down by train, and then got a taxi across to Maiden Castle, and went along with my little tape recorder, and I went along with one of my mates as well. He said, if you want to bring one of your friends, bring one of your friends down. So I took me Sunday League goalkeeper, who was a big Newcastle fan, Mark Collingwood, with us. And I got there, got the reception, just said that I was here to interview Kenny Dalglish, and that was it. He welcomed us in, he had his tracksuit on, took us down to his office at Maiden Castle, and on the day, I set my tape recorder away, and I went on like every good fanzine that I did, and asked him all the questions that I wanted to ask him. He didn't hold back from anything, and at the end of the meeting that we had, he asked if he could have a couple of minutes with me on my own. He didn't want to say anything in front of me mate Mark, so Mark went outside and we chatted for a little bit about what the press were actually like, and he highlighted 2 papers in particular. He highlighted the Mail on the Daily Mail and the Sun. The Sun for obvious reasons, because of its the disgraceful headline when people perished at Hillsborough, and obviously the Mail as well. He said, Steve, he said, I'm delighted to be here. I'm going to have a great, I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to finally win that trophy for Newcastle United supporters. He says, but please be aware, he says, that some of these press are going to have it in for me, and I'm not going to be given the time that I would like to have to essentially settle in and do the job that I want to do here. And I'd never heard anything like this in my life, especially from a football manager. But that particular situation made me think about how the press work and how the media work. And we shook hands and we posed for an obligatory photograph, which was great. And off I went, and I put the interview out, and the newspapers came to me. They wanted to get, they couldn't believe that Kenny Dalglish had given the exclusive interview to a fanzine editor. And, from there on, I was on Kenny's guest list. I got invited to games, but that was the period of that wonderful Champions League period. And the highlight of that was, if you remember, when he used to go to the ground, they actually used to have a media tent, a media city, wherever the Champions League games used to go to. So Kenny gave me a pass for those games, which meant that I could go in for the pre-match and post-match conferences and cover them. And I was blown away with that opportunity, to be able to go in and mix with the world's press, ex-players, And it just gave me a little niche, which I never ever, could never ever have dreamt of. The best press conference I went to had to be when there was a Russian journalist in. And Kenny, as we know, was never the most cooperative person with the press for obvious reasons. But we stood there as a Russian journalist asked their question in Russian. So Kenny just looks, no answer. So then the guy repeats the question again in Russian, no answer. And he goes, "We've not got any translators, like." And the guy it was the woman who was doing the PR at the time. It was a woman called Hazel Green, and she went, "Have we got anybody who speaks Russian?" And they didn't have anybody that speaks Russian, and it was just one of those moments where Kenny just cut him straight off, just shook his head, looked at Hazel Green, shook his head, and then continued to talk to the other press and media. And the guy from Russia was standing there like putting his arms up. We're not going to get answers to your questions yet. The night of the Barcelona game, though, was really special because Simon O'Rourke, who was a bit of a rookie at the time on ITV, had really just started to do interviews in sport, and he asked me if I would be interested in doing an interview prior to the match, prior to the big game at St James's Park, the 3-2 game. And I said, yeah, no problem, I'll be happy to do it. And I went up to the ground early, and Simon didn't tell us that he'd actually got permission to do it at pitch side. Obviously it was being covered worldwide, so I got an opportunity to go through the players' entrance, down the tunnel, and then onto the pitch side as the players were warming up and do my interview. And it was fascinating, to be there. And Louis van Gaal came down, and, Kenny Dalglish came down, shook my hand. And it was just a remarkable way of, building up to the game for me. I was obviously in my usual seat back then in the Gallagher end. But to actually have been pitch side on one of the biggest nights in European history, of our European history, and get a chance to do that interview and to see some of these players and the managers up close was something I'll never forget. And I always, I always speak to Kenny when I've seen him many times since, and always thanked him for that. And he's never told us who it was who told him to get in touch with me, but I'll always be thankful. But the Barcelona game was brilliant. A lot of people in the chat going, have you that needs to be re-released on DVD, but I think I do still have it. So Donald, if I can get a copy, of it run off for you, I will do, mate. And the next time we have a bit of a get together, I'll sort you a copy out. So don't worry about it. I've definitely got a copy of that. But as for the retro show, it's been fantastic. There's been some brilliant shows. I love doing the Newcastle United stuff as well, which of course is connected to this. I've stuck a link in the chat for you guys to watch the Tino and Gillespie night that John Gibson did at 9 Bar. Well worth a watch because they talk predominantly about this game. And don't fear, the lads on the screen will still be here. We are launching a new show next Wednesday, which I'm sure George will be happy to take part in, because it means George can finally start talking about what's going on at this moment in time. We're going to launch a show which Stu Penman actually came up with the name with. Geordie's here, Geordie's there, which I think is a brilliant name for a title. Stu's come up with the idea, and I think Wednesday night's a perfect fit for it. So, lads, are you all up for that, or do you just want to retire on a Wednesday?
I thought you wanted to finish the sentence of the name there.
I nearly did that.
How many hours homework do I have to do before that one?
You don't need to do any homework because you're going to be talking about modern day, but with a twist. I'm sure there'll be some comparisons as we go through, and when we play teams week by week, guys. I think you'll be able to drop in. Do you remember that game? And I think it'll be a slightly different feel to it. I think it'll be great. I think it just means we can keep the show going with you guys.
Great start. Great start with lead stories the next week then.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe look at a few stories. Look at a few stories with the teams that we've got coming up in the following week. I think that's a good way to go, and it still gives you that retro feel. But we'll be talking, and it gives the chat haven't really been able to get involved with this show as much as we hoped they would. Some younger members in there as well, especially. But I think it'll be great, lads. So great way to finish the retro show. But the retro show is over. Thanks for doing it, lads, and look forward to seeing you for part 1 of Geordie's here, Geordie's there next week. Take care.
Brilliant.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks
Yeah,
for watching.
Adios.
Adios.
Head back with your critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the